Okay, we go. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Everybody, thank you for your statements. Ms. Klobuchar and our Republican senators. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I agree that there's no question we're better than we were back in 2008 and 2009. I agree with that. That's undisputable. But I will argue we can do a whole lot better. It's been a 2% recovery. It's been a 2% recovery, which is either one of the slowest or the slowest since World War II or since 1960. And I think growth is about half of what it should be. And I think coming off that dreadful crash in 08, you know, we probably could be growing the economy as much as 5% for 3, 4, 5 years. We could. I think the potential is there for it. Frankly, while I fully agree we've had some much better news in non-farm payroll jobs, it's undisputable, I just want to note, to me at least, we're barely in recovery when it comes to business investment, CapEx. It's one of the most vital signs. It's also one of the best job creators. And this is the reason that I have been crusading and campaigning for significant corporate tax reduction and reform. I don't know that that would solve all the problems, but I think it would solve a lot of the problems. We're losing cash and we're losing plant and equipment to overseas. I hate to see it, but the reality is these firms have to function to the best return of their shareholders after tax. And so if you have the highest tax rate, highest business tax rate among the leading countries in the world, you're going to lose. We're not hospitable. Our firms are leaving. You see it in the front page this morning. Another pharmaceutical company wants a merger in order to relocate. I guess it's Ireland. Losing tech companies to Ireland, farmers. So my point is a simple one. I'd like to, at some point down the road, frankly, I'd like to abolish the corporate tax in its entirety. I've seen a lot of work done on this. It's a very doable proposition. But for now, I would recommend a 20% corporate tax rate, which would put us about on par with Great Britain. The UK has the best economy in Europe. They're growing a little better than 3%. 20%. Canada, I think its federal rate is 15%. That's where I would go. And I also would have full cash expensing, full immediate write-offs for cash expensing. And I would abolish every other deduction and credit in order to get that. If you want it to be revenue neutral in static terms, or if you want to price it out in growth terms with a little supply side effect, whatever you have to do, get rid of the deductions, you know? And that's one of the reasons, if I can just put an advertisement in, it doesn't have a thing to do with the corporate tax, I am strongly in favor of abolishing the XM Bank and all other forms of corporate welfare. I just wanted to say that. Now, other areas, we have problems. You both noted it. Jared's a labor expert. The numbers have improved, but there are big holes in the labor story. There are big holes in the income story. There are big holes in the wages story. Big holes. And it's been a very, very weak recovery in the jobs area. I will say, this is my view, editorial view, but I've been involved in economic policy on and off for a very long time. I believe that the government spending stimulus from the federal government and the monetary stimulus from the Federal Reserve failed. Both failed. I believe these so-called fiscal multipliers failed. I believe the money multipliers failed, and particularly with the collapse of velocity and the risk aversion and the huge appetite for safe cash. So it all failed. In fact, on money, I'm an ex-Fed guy many, many years ago. If you look at the M2 money supply, it hasn't changed. It's been growing at 6.5% of this whole period, even though the Fed's balance sheet, the monetary base, has increased by over $3 trillion. So I believe we would have been better off not intervening. I think the economy would have recovered faster. Now, recent year or so, we've had some increases in tax rates, and there are more to come, and that's not going to help the story either. I'm a guy who believes in monetary rules. John Taylor was just down here, professor at Stanford, good friend of mine. I think the Taylor rule would be better for the Fed. I think the Fed should watch market prices, such as commodities and gold and the Treasury yield curve and the exchange rate of the dollar. I think they would do a lot better. I agree with Professor Casey Mulligan of Chicago that redistributionism has contributed to this recession. I'm in favor of a safety net, always have been. But I think the widening of eligibility under Mr. Bush and Mr. Obama has created incentives not to work. And I think whether it's food stamps or disability insurance or long-term unemployment, I don't want to sound hard-hearted, but I think it's not in their interest to get off. The marginal tax rate of getting off those programs can be as high as 80 and 90%, and I think that's been another problem. So I'll just add some lighter regulations. We can get into this later on. One point, finally, something I'm an optimist at heart. I love to be an optimist. I don't see a recession. I don't see a recession. And I kind of hate it when people try to politicize the numbers. All right, I've given you my best view on the economy, and it's no secret that I'm a Reagan supply-sider. I'm not breaking any news there. But I will say this. In terms of the, what I'll just call the ultra-pessimists, I don't believe them either. To me, when you see a positive yield curve in the Treasury market, that signals continued expansion, albeit slow or moderate. We have never had a recession without a negative yield curve. And I just put that to the committee. I think it's a very important point. Secondly, we've had good news on the stock market, good news on corporate profits, and I don't see a stock market bubble. In fact, I don't see any bubbles right now. In fact, I think bubbles are the last thing we should worry about. The generals always fight the last war. It's a very strange thing. That's true in the military, and I think it's true in economic policy making, and I know it's true at the Federal Reserve. So in that sense, I am somewhat optimistic, but I would just say to you, you cut corporate tax rates and raise the value of the dollar about 10%, lower tax rates, stronger dollar, you can raise this growth rate. And it can happen overnight, and people will start taking risks, and money will come back to the United States. And we can expand jobs, capital spending, investment, and all the rest of it. Thank you. Sorry I went on a bit too long.